Hello everyone, welcome to the Statera podcast. Today I'm joined by Stef. Stef, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for having me.
That's good. We did a podcast, mate. It was about 6 months ago now, I think it was. Yeah, I know, it was a while ago. It might have even been longer. So, yeah, been wanting to get you on again during that period. But yeah, it's good that we can finally do it today. So, yeah, thanks very much for coming along. Now, we just thought we'd have a bit of a chat, and I can never remember how to pronounce his name, but
Nassim Harem, I think it is. Harem, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. It's quite simple, probably. And I've seen a bit of his Facebook stuff, and anyone watching this would have seen some things through his website or Facebook group. But, yeah, you've been looking a little bit at some of his stuff, Steph, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good starting point for us to have a chat about a number of different topics. Anyway, I'm really intrigued by him because I look at him and I look at individuals like Carl Sagan as well, who are really integrated in their approach to their life. So they may, Carl Sagan being a cosmologist, but he's also a biologist, he's also an astronomer, also looked at different other facets and disciplines in life and integrated them all to try and understand and have a real comprehensive a broader view of life, so to speak. And
he was a stoner as well, Steph. Yeah. You're right, he liked to smoke. Yeah.
That's good news too. Expand his consciousness. Yeah, so I think Nassim does that as well. He speaks, I'm listening to, at the moment, it's a lecture that he did, and I can't remember when. I'll get you the info if you need it, and I can actually flick you the lecture. But it was a 9-hour lecture that he did. And I'm a few hours through it. And he's actually talking about crop circles at the moment in this one of the parts of his lectures, which is, in some way, yes, it's related to physics. The way he ties it up, it is, but in a direct way, you wouldn't make any correlation between crop circles and physics, so to speak. Yeah, but he's very, very interesting the way he does that. But what I was going to tell you earlier was he starts speaking about entropy and order and disorder and so forth, and what the example of the crop circles is numerous reasons for him bringing it up, but one of the examples is he's trying to express to his audience that there's a great deal of order in this, and there's an implicit order that exists that goes beyond just a coincidence, or he calls them, I think, Doug and Dave in the field at night making these crop circles. It doesn't work. Like some of the angles, and he looks at the way the wheat falls and the way the sun hits the wheat, and where it's situated geographically as well, like its coordinates and so forth. And I don't want to get off track, but he starts speaking about the human body at a cellular level. So he says, obviously, there's a lot of cells, or trillions of cells in our body, right? And he says each cell has 6 foot of DNA in it.
Right, really? So okay.
Each cell in the human body has 6 foot of DNA.
Shit.
So once you unwind it and so forth, it extends for 6 feet. So if you have every cell in the human body, and then you multiply that by 6 feet of DNA, that wraps around the world 5 million times.
You're kidding, right?
Isn't that unreal?
Damn, it's amazing, yeah.
It's more than amazing. So I'm gonna like you need it, and he's basically saying, look, there's great order in that. There needs to be great order in that, and he goes into some other examples, and I don't want to repeat too much. I'm still absorbing that information. Also, I probably wouldn't do it justice to the degree that he would, but just try and for pardon the pun, wrap your head around that, and what that means, and how, what bearing does that have on the reality that we're living, or the way we perceive reality.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
It's absolutely incredible.
When I hear things like that, the whole idea of creationism really, I mean, for anyone who's sort of let's say not fundamentalist, to believe in creationism is almost taboo if you're not like a fundamentalist. But when I hear of different structures within the body and how they're brought together, and the absolute fluke that it takes to actually have a human body, and the biology and energetics are involved with it, makes me wonder sometimes, maybe were we created? Are our bodies a form of technology? And when you hear things like each cell has 6 foot worth of DNA in there, It's a lot of fucking DNA, you know.
The cell's very small as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had that tightly wrapped and, you know, different motions in it. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Like I was telling a friend of mine earlier about that, because I like to, for some reason sometimes I forget things. I don't know what it is. I'm working on it. I'm getting a better memory. I'm more enhanced, improved memory.
Sure.
So I like to repeat what I learn to help it sink in. You know, it's standard. But I'm telling him, and he's a really savvy guy. He's a really smart guy. I told him, and he said, "Oh, I don't really care." I said, "Wait, hold on a second, just wait." And there's no judgment on my part. Like I love him to death. You know, I'm not. It doesn't bother me that he does or doesn't. But I said, just wait a minute. I'm not repeating myself. I gave him the stats again and gave him a little bit more information. I said, just let it sit with you for a little bit. Just think about that. Like think about the scale and the magnitude. Think about the fact that there's 100 billion galaxies and that each galaxy has 3 billion stars. And that each star in those galaxies, the majority of those stars, are bigger than our solar system.
Yeah, sure.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, like we are a speck, like Carl Sagan says, you know, a mode of dust.
Yeah, that pale blue dot was a famous line of his.
And that brings, have you seen the YouTube clip of that?
I have, yeah.
And I purposely watch that regularly, like once every few weeks.
Right, cool.
It's quite emotive for me. It's a really moving. Right. Man, I say it as a laugh, just jokingly. I say if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye, you're not human. You know?
Sure.
But it's really, it puts life in perspective. So I'm thinking, if we switch our perspective and start to understand life differently based on information that we're exposed to or that we're willing to understand, and we create a greater awareness around that information, which expands our consciousness, which is simply, I suppose, energy, but also a form of being exposed to greater insight, knowledge, wisdom, etc. Sure. How does that affect the manner in which we behave or the manner in which we walk through this life? These are really big questions I've been asking for a long time personally, but more so lately, like really asking a lot of questions around that, around perspective and perception and
relativism and
absolutely, definitely. I think that's. I mean, relativism in what sense though? In what context do you mean that?
How we're what's what we find relative as like on a micro level, just living our day-to-day life, driving to work and friends against the galaxy and
absolutely and looking at like infinity, not only at infinity in say towards big or large, but also infinity towards small. Like, let's just sit with that for a moment. That there is infinity. There is no beginning. There is no end.
Right.
So there isn't a point where we can say, okay, that's the smallest thing, or again, probably the terminology I'm not using it right. I'm not a physicist, but that's the smallest particulate or particle, whatever it may be, or subatomic substance that there is. That doesn't occur. Well, Nassim seems to think that doesn't happen.
Right.
Because it's infinite one way and infinite the other way.
Sure.
Because it works in parallel.
Yeah.
Or opposite.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, right, I get sort of lost for words here, but what bearing does that have on our reality? And I know some people will probably say, nothing, just keep working and moving through life. You know? But I don't know, if we sit with some information and we understand it differently, surely that would have an influence on how we live, what we do, with the lives that we have, with the consciousness that we experience, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I think it definitely would. And sometimes it's really that lack of perspective, even towards our fellow human being and our understanding of our fellow human being, let alone of how infinitely small we can get down to and how infinitely large we can as well. Talking about infinitely small though, I've got something that's been really occurring to me over the last sort of 6 months is my belief is, and just through what I've experienced, is that the smaller we go and smaller we get down into the particulates and energy matter, that brings us closer to source or God or whatever you might want to say. And it's interesting to say that. Yeah, and the larger we go, that's more the material. And I actually had an experience with a ceremony I did in London where I believe I entered like the 4th or 5th dimension and I saw everything as a series of hexagons. And I remember I had a chair sort of next to me here, and I had my hand and I was moving it back and forth from the chair like this. And there was just these series of overlaying hexagons, and whatever was closest to the material like either my hand or the chair, they were the larger hexagons. And the spaces in between would get smaller and smaller to like tiny, tiny hexagons. And that was God. That was in between was what everything is, the universe is made of, is this source energy. And it's something that I'd sort of thought about a little bit, but this particular ceremony I got like a real lesson, and maybe that's just my truth, but I really feel like there's something there with that.
Well, think about for a moment, and you can draw a parallel here, I think. Think about what many masters and many disciplines or spiritualities across the ages, thousands of years, have been advocating, and that's introspection.
Yeah.
So whether it be meditation or prayer, but it's going within.
Sure.
There's an association, I think, or a parallel drawn from going within to getting not so much smaller, but going deep within yourself rather than... So it's a contraction rather than expansion.
Yeah.
So there's a parallel drawn between expansion, maybe materialism, so to speak, or contraction. This is more of a spiritual sense, I suppose. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, definitely.
But a contraction and an introspection on what that means. So you're infinitely getting smaller, or infinitely going within rather than without.
Sure.
So, I mean, what you're saying to me makes sense.
Yeah. But we're caught up in a world where it is all about the material and expanding on the material. So, and in growing up in the Western world especially, that focus is changing, I do believe, but it's always been a focus of don't worry about what's going on in here, just worry about working and, getting this and getting that.
Because that's at our fingertips, isn't it?
More
so
exactly.
It's
easier.
perception.
Yeah.
It's instinctual as well.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
And almost survival based. So,
yeah.
We know that if we don't have an understanding or a control, so to speak, of our outer world or the physical world, that our lives are at jeopardy.
But are we past that now, Steph?
What do you mean, culturally?
Yeah.
Or
socially, culturally? Yeah. Are we past the need of having to worry?
Yeah, we are to a point, like you go back a few thousand years ago, or however long you want to go back. You go back hundreds of thousands of years, it's irrelevant, but where you had to be aware of more so of your environment. So you could walk out of your cave and there's a saber-toothed tiger there, that example. But that instinctive nature genetically is still embedded within us. So now all that anxiety and those fears are represented in a different manner. It's more cultural, it's more social, it's more emotional, it's more psychological. It's less about our physical environment. Our physical environment is far safer, well, I think it is, and I know we can get in a car and you don't know what's going to happen. You're relying on the mechanics of your car to stay together. You're relying on the hundreds of or thousands of other people on the road not to bang into you, but we disconnect from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're living in far safer conditions. We have greater access to, social equity in a sense has improved. Statistically, if you're looking at it, more people have access to food and shelter and bait and
health
and so forth. So that physical presence or that physical anxiety is diminishing, yet it's been replaced with this intense socio-cultural, almost like a social pathology. And we're creating it for ourselves through the systems that we have. Sure. And systems that we implement.
So you're saying that's because of the biology that's been ingrained with us for hundreds of thousands of years.
The instinctive aspect, definitely.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it overrides us because we don't understand it. And we don't understand that. Basically, I don't think we understand ourselves to the fullest capacity that we could. Yeah. So I don't think as a human collective, and I don't feel that we have accessed the most effective and efficient methodologies to deal with who we are and life, because we don't allow the space, we don't create the space, so we don't allow ourselves to dwell in that space to do so. So much cultural clutter, call it cultural clutter. There's so much cultural clutter around us that we don't even have the opportunity to, just, not that we don't have it, we don't create it for ourselves to sit there and go into deep introspection and look at different ways to treat ourselves and treat each other. Yeah. I think these are really foundation.
Oh, definitely.
Like foundational principles for existence,
definitely.
Just retrospection, introspection, understanding oneself. Because if you then come from a different place and your motivation is different than it is now. We're talking as a collective now, so there's got to be some level of generalisation here because we're talking masses, and forget about probably what influences the masses, so to speak. Maybe that's another conversation, maybe it's not. We might go down that path or not. But when you're looking at mass movement, that has a lot of energy flow with it.
Sure.
And it has a lot of dynamism. Yeah, am I saying that right? Yeah. So there's a lot of dynamic flow that goes with that. So it's very powerful. So when we look at that and we think, well, as a collective we're doing this, and we're doing this because we're motivated by this. Well, what if we were motivated differently? What would the outcome be? How would we flow? What would it look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Am I explaining myself correctly?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I write better than I speak.
Stef's got a blog too, by the way. Actually, was it Labyrinth of Life?
Yeah. I'm going to change it though to my name soon. I'm doing a transition, StefSifandos.com. But this isn't a plug. I don't mean to make it a plug.
Thought I'd get a quick one in. I'll put in a plug. I've got a blog as well, but I've actually got it as Statera, AdrianSnary.com, Statera podcast. But I'm thinking about just changing back to AdrianSnary.com. So we'll see. No, definitely. I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. We need and I think it is happening though, Steph. There are more and more people that are starting to realise that we're not going to gain anything by basing our understanding of ourselves individually, especially the way we have been doing it. You know, it's like we're too afraid to go within and really understand ourselves. There's a real fear based, and whether that comes from, I mean, I guess it's cultural programming. I guess it's just an understandable, because a lot of people have a lot of shit to deal with. And the unfortunate thing is to deal with it, generally, things like pharmaceuticals are used, or alcohol, marijuana, all these substances, when they're used in the wrong manner at least. But if we could create a system or a way where people could feel there's a comfort, or they're being held, I guess, and can go within. It really just comes down to having a strength as well, though, to find that strength in yourself.
But we live in and I totally agree with you, but don't we live in a society that is full of quick fixes? Definitely, yeah. Economically, it's like that. So physically, mentally. Here's a credit card. Bam. Yeah. Here's a loan to pay your debts. Yeah. You get approved in 5 minutes. Sure. Bam. Done. Sure. But you got a headache? Take a Panadol. Yeah. Or a Panamax, whatever the fuck it's called. You take an aspirin.
But do you know what the benefit of that is, though? That's also helping to drive technology as well. Which is an important part of our evolution. So, at the same time, it's like it's that balance. It really is. Like that's a part of our lifestyle and our life now, where everything is quick. If we need something done, and technology is improving exponentially. Yeah, but
byproduct of that is exponential growth in technology and innovation, which has tremendous capacity to do. Name something.
God knows what. Yeah.
Whatever you want. Increase in energy access for people. Food for people. They're developing food in labs right now, right or wrong. And I'm not necessarily referring to GMO. I'm referring to. It is GMO, but not in the traditional sense, like the Monsanto sense. But it is genetically modified organism where they're getting a stem cell of something of meat, and then they're turning it into a piece of meat and fill it steak. Right. Yeah. And it tastes the same. People don't know the difference. Sure. They're doing that now. Yeah. So, right. There's lots of we live in a world of polarity. A star explodes, a star is born. There's love. There's hate. There's up. There's down. There's whatever's happening. There's an equal to it to. Positive and negative, so to speak. So there's no doubt about that. Well, I suppose bringing back to what we originally spoke about is if we understand the world from a different space, how do we actually operate in that world? How do we behave? How do we think? How do we feel? How does that then affect the way we treat each other? And I'm not talking about let's all wear comfortable loose clothing and sit on top of a mountain hill and dance, although that's really good too. Sure. I've done that. I really has its moments. Sun was shining as Eastern Europe, but that was really nice. But
when you're in Rome,
So what I'm referring to is like a total transformation based on a deeper intrinsic understanding of reality.
Right.
And if we have that, wouldn't we have access, if we engage in that, wouldn't we have access to greater insights?
Yeah.
I'll give this an analogy, right? If you're playing a sport, we'll just use sports because not everyone, but most people into sport have an understanding of sport. So there's levels of sport in terms of, how high you can go into what division you're in and so forth. Okay, so let's just say there's an A to Z division, and Division A is the Australian League of something. Okay. As you go through, you work through, F and E and D and C. I think I got that right. G, whatever it may be, P and B, and you get to A, whatever it may be.
Do it backwards, Stef, and I'll be impressed.
Z, Y, all that stuff. But as you work through, you're exposed to more efficient training methodologies. You're exposed to a deeper understanding of the human body, because generally sport requires physical movement. You're you're exposed to more tactics. You're exposed to way smarter tactics. And that's because you're going through a level, and you're going through a level of you're playing a higher game. Right? You're playing a game where the individuals there, this is relative now to that sport, are at their best, they're at their elite. So what if we take that analogy and look at the human mind, and we look at that as, absolutely exposing its infinite potential.
Sure.
Because, and I just want to elaborate on infinite potential for a minute. Just go back for a second. So we're talking about infinite growth, and we're talking about infinite small, so to speak.
Yep.
Then there must, to some capacity, and that's infinite living in a finite body, right? So in a finite structure, infinite's living in a finite structure. What's to say the mind isn't infinite as well? So sure, the physical brain might have a finite capacity, but if we're talking brain and mind as a split, so to speak, or as a consciousness, then are we also assuming, and I don't know the answer to this, are we also assuming infinity in consciousness and mind?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, what's our potential?
Yeah.
Is it actually limited by our physicality, or if we have a new level of understanding, can we expose that and keep growing? For example, I think last time we spoke about, lifespans and living, why can't we live to 200, 300, 400?
With our current physical bodies that we have, yeah.
But a lot has to change, obviously, or transform, morph. But is that not possible?
I read something once that our bodies have the capabilities to lift we should all be able to lift about 120. I just read it, so who knows?
Yeah, sure.
But going back to the physical body and the potentiality, I do believe our physical, when you're talking about the Z to A, physically especially, there is a plateau that goes on the further you get. So then bringing that back to technology and the increased technology, if we're consciously able to expand exponentially, which I believe we are, but we're held back physically by a plateau scenario, or what's the inverse of exponential? What's that? I can't think right now, but yeah. The increase in technology, I'm talking about, I guess I'm really talking about transhumanism. Like if we can get to a point where technology is able to really be incorporated with consciousness, and we can physically... It's getting that way. It definitely is. I saw a YouTube clip the other day of a dude who was a double amputee from the shoulder.
I'll put it up.
Was that from you? Yeah, right.
No, I don't know if you've seen it from me, but I'll put it up on my Twitter and the Labyrinth and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to add you, mate.
I don't know you.
I've only got 3 friends. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I just post it because I link it to the Labyrinth, and it's just easy.
Yeah, sure.
But this guy's moving his arms and with his mind. Now that's phenomenal.
He didn't even have a helmet on or anything.
No. Medicine is growing, man. Medicine is growing exponentially. Now, I'm a big fan, and I always have been, of preventative rather than curative, right?
Very important.
But what technology is allowing us to do is understand the human body at deeper and deeper levels. But I still don't know if we're asking the right questions. I don't know if we're doing it for the right purpose. I still don't understand that.
I definitely used to think, I always thought of anyone who was that transhumanist type and really wanted to push them. Was it just their ego? Was it they've got a fear of death and all the wrong reasons? But I watched this podcast last week, I think it was, and had a guy, this dude, right, he's a futurist. His name's Zoltan. You couldn't get a better name. He's like an evil character for some comic book. His name's Zoltan. Really uber intelligent. But he's talking about, he brought it more into the spiritual as well, and more into how we can use that increase in technology, because it will happen. It's happening.
It's happening now. We're integrating artificial intelligence, robotics, technology. We're integrating with biology. It's happening now. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So it was good to hear from his point of view, talking about it from how it can benefit us individually, taking ego out of it, taking fear out of it, how we can use it to better ourselves and better the world. And, you know, and I think that's where we need to get to. And I'm optimistic that we can, but it's going to take that balance of what we spoke about a bit earlier of introspection and really sorting ourselves out first before we can really accommodate or live in a state of symbiosis with that sort of technology that could really, otherwise we'll just end up in a material world, which is purely material, and that's about it.
There's no integration
exactly
of you know, the various aspects of the human self.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we focus too much on the spiritual, that's not healthy either. We neglect the vessel that the spirit you know, works through on this earth plane. We neglect that. So we need to find that balance, and I'm not sure what that balance is, and I'm not sure if that balance is different for everyone, but there's a level of objectivism and a level of subjectivism to some degree that exists for all of us. I'm not sure. I'm just asking questions really, but
I agree with you. I mean, how can we determine that? I don't think I think it would be an individual level, but I don't know, maybe it would be on a collective. I'm not too sure.
Look, this is and you know Kai, yeah. So I put something up the other day, or he put, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, like, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I wrote something about collectivism, and I fundamentally my understanding or the way I purposefully, consciously view collectivism is probably a little bit different to its rigid definition or to its standard philosophical definition.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind explaining your?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And it's probably, I'm probably using the wrong term. There probably is another term out there that encompasses what how I interpret it. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe for a moment that we are relational beings. And I believe that for a really long time. So we require oxygen to breathe. Therefore, we rely on oxygen. Right? We rely on gravity. We rely on shelter. We are also not only relational beings in that sense, but we're also relational beings in the sense that we need human communication, human touch, human understanding amongst other human beings, which some would say is just a reflection of yourself, and you get to a quantum level, and it's really the whole world is just you and nothing but you, and that applies to everyone, and that just confuses the fuck out of you. But at the same time it doesn't.
But try telling that someone that's in solitary confinement, they probably don't see it from that point of view.
Probably not. But what I was getting at was that we're relational beings. So when I think of collectivism, I don't think everything's done for the group and it neglects the individual. I think everything is done for the group and for the individual simultaneously. So consciously you have both in mind, because both are one and the same. Sure. Because without the individual, the collective doesn't exist from a number of perspectives. So if we're in a group, and I hope the audience gets the line of thought that I'm going with you, and I hope you do too. But if I'm in a group and I remove myself from that group, or if I die, for example, and I'm making some assumptions that are attached to that, then that group has no meaning to me. Now, if that group doesn't do well or doesn't move towards a particular objective, I will be affected by that as well. Sure. So I hope I explained that properly. What I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get at, simply put, is collectivism for me is a combination of focusing on the greater good for all involved, all stakeholders, so to speak. That's a pretty good term. I like the term stakeholders. Yeah, so that's
that encompasses everyone that's involved. Yeah.
Not only human beings, but Earth, concepts, ideologies. I'm not advocating necessarily cultural relativism. That's another conversation. But what I'm saying is it keeps in perspective everything that's required to live a successful life or an enriched life or an evolved life. So for me, collectivism is really, really about the group and the individual at the same time, because both grow together. Yeah. Both have capacity to grow together. Sure. So that's, I know that's probably not a standard definition or rigid definition of collectivism, but for me that's what it is. Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. I understand what you're saying. It definitely makes sense. There's a sociologist, and I cannot think of his name. First semester this year, I should say, I read a fair bit about him. I can't remember it, but talking about that whole setup and how important it really is to, if you are an individual, like a human being as an individual, we really do need that touch
sight, sound as with other human beings. Otherwise, we die. You know, a baby dies.
Balance, doesn't
yeah,
it?
exactly.
Selfish, selfless. You need a balance of selfishness.
Sure.
To maintain the integrity of yourself at every level.
Yeah.
And then you need a balance of selflessness to assist others, to enlighten others, to then enlighten you.
That's a very good point, Stef. That's something I've been...
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I probably should have said in the last fucking 10 minutes. That's
sure.
what you should have said that and I would have done
You condensed it down. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
That's something I've really been thinking about a lot this year, really. And that whole selfishness and selfishness to be selfless as well, and that whole dynamic...
There's nothing wrong with it. We attach these judgmental labels, mate.
Yeah.
If someone's selfish, he's selfish or she's selfish.
Sure.
They need to be selfish.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you weren't selfish, then you wouldn't survive.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes you need to be selfish too. But then there's that thing. I mean, selfish as in taking someone else's food so that you can live and someone else has to die because you believe you're going to be better off. Or, I mean, there's definitely varying degrees of selfishness. There really is.
There are, but then are they in balance?
Yeah.
But are you talking about? I mean, are you coming from an ethical perspective there when you made that statement about?
Yeah, ethical and also evolutionary as well. I mean, what has it that's allowed human beings to get to the top of the food chain, and it's been our selfishness really. We've become the dominant species on this planet as far as we're aware of anyway, and it has come from a level of selfishness. But maybe is it
too warped now? That level of selfishness?
Perhaps.
Is it too extreme?
Perhaps, but maybe, because I'm only focusing on the negative, but perhaps it's also come about by huge levels of selflessness as well from human beings. Like we also do help each other out, and we do bond against other animals and, you know, especially other primates as well, where we seem to be able to help each other out a lot more. I know there's different biologies involved with that as well, but yeah, the idea of selfishness and selflessness, I think definitely people can get there are people that go too far one way or the other, and yeah.
Would you agree we live in a very individualistic society that prioritises the needs of the individual over the collective at large in Western society? And then on the back of that, would you agree that Western society is probably the dominant culture of the world or social system that we live by?
Yeah.
So that's part of that is capitalism and individualism and the prioritisation of the individual and sovereign nations and so forth. Would you say that?
In my world it is, because I'm involved in that world, but I've never experienced living in an Eastern culture and see it from their point of view, but from what I see, sort of if I can ever take myself away and look back at it, it seems to be more and more increasing and taking over other parts of different cultural paradigms. So I'd say so, yeah, but I don't know, I'm not too sure. I'd have to have a bit more to think about that. Yeah, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
So what I was getting to, so if that is the case, then what bearing does that have on the way we function and we operate and we think and we feel and we behave and we do and we be in the world, if that's the case?
Yeah.
And is that system, that collective system that we abide by, and just to simplify, we'll call it the Western paradigm and all that encompasses, is that system the most ideal system for our collective evolution?
I would think not, but neither is the Eastern, is it? Maybe.
I'm not sure.
What is the combination of the two? Really, I would think. I mean, the way I definitely, when you look at the Western paradigm from a negative standpoint, I think of the materialism and the inefficiency of resources is a massive thing, and leading to pollution, etc. But again, the technology that is stemmed from that and gained from that is of huge benefit to us. I'm a very limited knowledge of the Eastern philosophies. I know this is something you're more into as well, but that seems to be very much more of an introspective manner and more environmental, and I'm thinking of Taoism and things like that. So if we can bringing the two together, if that's at all possible, then that's where we're at.
I look at systems as an outward manifestation of an internal process or an internal state of being. As
by a collective?
Both.
Right.
So by a collective and as individuals as well.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So whatever system we implement, is a reflection of our internal collective state, which then influences greatly, because that's the environmental conditions by which we live by. Then that influences the individual, which then reinforces a particular point or belief system or ideology.
Sure.
You understand that line of thought? Yeah. I'm not because you don't understand, because am I explaining it properly?
Yeah, you are.
Cool.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
So whatever system we implement, whether it be an ism of socialism or capitalism, what's really important is that what does that system reflect internally? So that's an outward reflection, that's an outward manifestation.
Sure.
So we look at something, you're familiar with a resource-based economy? Sure.
Yep.
Okay. So that system by which we would live as a collective. Oh, sorry, mate. Again. Oh, sorry, little
that's Pooch.
Puppy. Move the puppy. So that system that we would live by, if we were to implement that at a mass level, is a state or is a reflection of the way we feel and behave and think about how we should operate in this world. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So if you look at a system like a resource-based economy, and it's by no means an end state or a perfect system. I think there are flaws in the system.
Jacques Briscoe was a proponent of it.
He's a big proponent of it.
And he even admitted himself it's not perfect.
He definitely has. And then look, Peter Joseph's another advocate, and he believes strongly in the system. Peter Diamandis believes strongly in the system. He has actually quite interesting views. Anyway, it's another story. But if we look at that system as a manifestation, you look at what the principles of that system are and how they operate and what they're about. What's the essence of that system? So if you look at that system, the essence of that system is equity. The essence of that system is inclusivity. Okay? The essence of that system is, so from an apophatic point of view, it's not corruption.
Right.
It's not driven by selfishness. It's driven by selflessness, which then ensures a selfish byproduct, which is survival at a very high level.
Sure.
So what I mean by high level is access to resources.
Yeah.
So I mean, not going into the details of resource-based economy as such, and I'm sure most people have people with your viewers, I'm sure would have an understanding of it.
Can you give us a brief summarization about that?
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not totally au fait with it.
Sure. And it's really complex as well. Like there's another system like an inclusive democracy. I can't remember that. He's a Greek gentleman. I can't remember his name though. Inclusive democracy, and that's a very similar system. There's many different systems that are similar to this, but basically what it does is it integrates a high level of technology and innovation to determine equitable distribution of resources.
So is it taken out of human beings' hands?
Correct.
Okay.
So you're then given. So they're making assumptions, but assumptions based on real life and real time data that there are more than enough resources. And when I say resources, that encompasses minerals we pull from the ground, energy, food, shelter, social standard of living, access to what's it called? Sorry, I have a mental block. Access to vocational activities, whatever that may be.
Sure.
It integrates a lot of new technology, i.e. 3D printing, and at this stage 3D printing is great, but it's not where it needs to be at any level to be able to make the impact that a resource-based economy advocates, right?
Sure.
So there'll be a number of transition systems or periods before a resource-based economy would come into effect, and that would also alter and change as well. But in essence, back to what I was saying about a resource-based economy, is that it provides access to resources and a lifestyle that everyone can have. So what they then claim to say is that if that's the case, and it removes money as well, so it's not a monetary system.
Right, okay.
There's no need for barter. Everything is really there's a lot of automation. Like if you look now, you can see automations taking place all around us.
Yeah.
You look at our factory production systems. You look at, you go to Woolworths or Coles or any major food outlet store. They're having self-checkouts. That's a form of automation.
The freakiest one so far is at Amazon, where their drones, they deliver their products straight to your home through their drones. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is all automation. So, with all again, artificial intelligence, robotics, GPS system tracking.
The Google car came out today as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, what that's done a lot. So what one Google car has done in terms of what it's scanned in its mapping in terms of autonomous vehicles, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, sure.
So everything's moving towards automation. So just on a very slight tangent for a moment, and we look at technological unemployment as an example. Okay, so a resource-based economy removes planned obsolescence.
Right,
You know,
sure.
planned obsolescence. Yeah,
Do,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
So it removes that.
Yep.
Because everything's done not from a profit motive perspective, but an efficiency perspective and a survival perspective and what's best for the earth perspective. So it looks at the earth's carrying capacity. That's a big component of the resource-based economy.
Right.
That's what I mean by it's very inclusive. It's not just what do the people need, but what does the ecology require for it to thrive, so we don't burn it out at a faster rate that it can replenish itself.
Sure.
Again, not a perfect system because there's a lot of variables that need to take place for that to occur.
Well, there's still human beings involved.
To some degree, but it removes politics as well. So resource-based economy removes politics.
Right.
It removes law enforcement, so to speak. You know, we ask them fundamental questions like why do we go to war? Why do nations go to war? You know, why is there so much crime? Is it purely because of a resource-based? Is it purely because of a monetary-based system? I don't think it's purely because of that. I think that's a large portion of it. Resource-based economy claims a fairly high percentage, like I think 75 to 90% of all crime would be removed.
Right.
In a not perfect resource-based economy, but a very evolved resource-based economy.
Sure. Because it seems to be increasing the way I see it. Like it seems like it might have been more from ego, but now it's more about like what resources we need, and especially with the reduction in resources that countries have, you know, and they're using either economic gains or they're using war to then take care of themselves. Yeah, waste. Massive amounts of inefficiency.
Tremendous amount of waste because we're driven by a profit motive.
Right.
I'm not saying profit's bad or money's bad. What I'm saying is, though, we're doing it at the expense of what creates a foundation for our existence, and that's the earth.
Sure.
That's a physical plane we live in.
Yeah.
And that is finite to a degree, and it takes hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years to replenish what it needs to replenish the way we're living our lifestyles. Now, so resource-based economy looks at things very, very differently. You know, it incorporates a high degree of renewables as well, and how. But I mean, again, mate, for renewables to be effective, like we need to do a lot of mining as well. I mean, China has, I think, 1/3 of what's called precious metals. So it has 1/3 of the Earth's precious metals, so to speak. And that's what contributes.
Really?
Yeah. That's
Do you mean they import that in, or
no,
they actually have
that?
Really?
They have that.
Okay.
So they control the price mechanism for that as well.
Really? All right.
So when you're looking at 1/3, that's a big chunk just for one sovereign nation or country to have.
Yeah.
And you know, from a geopolitical perspective, within our system and the restraints of our system, that's dangerous.
Right, yeah,
sure.
Sure.
And you can see why, socioeconomically and geopolitically, you can see why. But those resources, they go a lot into solar, into any other RET technology as well. They go into electronics, our mobile phones, a lot of digital. So we also have to be aware of that. And we're just, you know, you have a mobile phone, it's thrown away within a year.
I was thinking about that today. You don't see TV repair stores anymore. Everyone, TV dumps, you go buy a new TV. Yeah.
There's one that I know of in Spielwood, it's called Nick's Fix.
Okay.
I know you're I know you're a global podcast here, so for many of the international viewers, they're not going to get Nick's Fix in Spielwood, but...
Steph, that brings you to a very good segue. I'm going to do a unashamed plug here. Anyone knows me, I'm very anti-advertising and anti-marketing. It has its place, I guess, but these are like the best, more just for other people's benefit. These are like the best things I've ever tasted. Called Veggie Crisps.
I wouldn't go that far, but they're really good.
I don't know. Maybe a Viennetta. Those Viennettas are pretty good. Or like
I used to smash those when I was a kid. That's so bad.
But anyway, I'll do an unashamed plug. If anyone from Veggie Crisps, Nature's Delicious Veggie Snack, wants to send me a box of these things, because I eat them not a lot, but a fair bit, please do so. Plug is out of the way. So.
In essence, that's a resource-based economy.
Resource-based economy, yeah.
If you Google resource-based economy, there's I'm not sure. I know there is so much information out there that goes into really great detail. Because you ask a lot of questions, you think, well, how do? Because people don't know. We don't know any better. Yeah. We don't know how. Can we imagine a world without government? Most people can't. And I don't mean to be rude, but most people can't.
No.
I still struggle, and I embrace a resource-based economy. And there's a lot of transitions that need to occur. Towards that, but I mean, without a governing body, without that
regulatory body,
so to speak, it's sort of hard to imagine because we're so tied to the system restraints that we live by now.
Sure.
But if our system was different, the world we lived by was different, and our access to resources was different, the way we lived was different. You know, a resource-based economy also, this is quite important, also advocates non-possession or non-ownership.
Right, okay.
So you don't own your own home. You
Sure.
don't own anything. You don't need to own anything.
Because you've everything's supplied for you. Yeah.
Correct.
Everything you need.
The way the cities are built and constructed are very... You know this because of what you're studying. They're very... Or you'd understand this. You'd really resonate with this. They're very integrated with the natural world as well. But not only that, everything's very carefully thought of with regards to transportation, with regards to access, with regards to what you have. I mean... People should look up resource-based economy if they're not familiar with it, because it's really, really interesting.
It definitely is, Steph. I think the main concern... Oh, you go for it. The main concern is the... maybe it's my main concern, is the transition into it. And like what...
My main concern too.
Yeah, and you were just talking about how can we envision a world in the future like that? We can't. I mean, there's no way... 20 years ago, we would have envisioned the way we live now. There's no way we've envisioned... like the internet on this little bit of plastic and metal that we can every information we need.
Has more powerful technology than what the President of the United States had 20 years ago.
Yeah. So what are we able to do in the next 20 years? We can't even imagine it. So it's like it's by chance, or is it dictated towards us, or is just by some fluke? I mean, how can we end up in a society where all our needs are met? And that follows a much more egalitarian ethos. How we get there is my concern. Is it going to come through an awakening, or is it going to come through an apocalypse, or
both that and more?
It's like whatever. Fuck it. Exactly. Whatever occurs.
Because
necessity will dictate it.
There's too many flaws in this. Like, how can we say, look, there's 2.5 billion people in poverty, starving, dying, under circumstances that, for some reason, I've got a thing with using the word ethics and morals lately. I don't know what it is.
Sure.
Just lately, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's fair enough.
A side note, but what is? How can we justify saying, well, that's just a natural byproduct of the world we live in? Well, I wonder if people that say that would be saying that if they were the 2.5 billion in poverty.
Exactly.
Hey, it's okay, I'm alright here.
Yeah.
I don't mind eating my own shit.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't mind having diarrhea every day. That's right. I don't mind having no food and living in the elements and...
Well, that's the idea of...
dirt and scum.
Yeah, I mean, karma is the other... I went to India in September it was, and, there's obviously a massive divide between the rich and the poor there, with definitely a lot more poor. But the understanding from the rich is that... And it's more of a cop-out than anything else. It's like, well, if someone's living in a lifestyle in poverty where they're homeless and living on the street, it's their karma. So why do I don't need to worry about it, because it's their thing. Like, that's fucking convenient, especially when it comes to like a little girl, 6-year-old girl who's like starving on the street, because she hasn't got enough food to keep her sustained.
So what does that mean? Like, so fundamentally...
That's when we become too selfish, that sort of...
Well, yeah, so what does that mean? Like, there's some of the things that I'm doing now in my vocational professional career. I told you I'm going to America in January for that conference. And the premise of the conference is, how can we affect positively, or how can we transform the lives of 1 billion people in your lifetime? How can you do that? What do you need? What idea do you need? An
individual, you mean, or working together as part of a collective?
No, work as an individual, as a collective, both. Right. Yeah, both. What do you need to do to contribute to that?
Oh, can I just say, sorry, Steph, please explain more, but I've always been a bit worrisome of those sort of things, like the charlatans out there that are just trying to... What's your take on that? And please go back to that as well. But
yeah, can you elaborate on that?
Just
what you're referring to specifically?
Like, there's ideologies behind that, but nothing that's you can grasp and actually fundamental to.
So it's more conceptual, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and someone likes to make a bit of money, so they'll hold a conference on.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's lots of people out there like that. And equally, there's as many people out there like that are ingenuine or not genuine.
I think so. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
there are many that are genuine, and the conference that I'm a part of, that I was invited to, I think is very, very genuine. He's got a proven, that organisation, that group of organisations have a proven track record of that.
Right.
They leverage technologies and innovation.
Okay.
He's an advocate of a resource-based economy as well. But they leverage they say, well, how can we utilise technology and innovation, the exponential growth of that, to transform not only our ideologies and the way we function in this world, and the way we move in this world, but also to physically change our conditions for the better.
Sure.
So that people that are in poverty can come out of poverty. And then if we can raise 700, 800 million children out of poverty and give them access to internet and give them access to digital platform and give them access to knowledge and give them access to voice, what does that then do for the collective?
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got 800 million individuals contributing now to the Internet of Things, or to the internet rather, the Internet of Things, something else, sorry, but to the Internet of everything, okay?
Sure.
How does that then, all those new, 800 million new ideas at a minimum, or 800 million new thoughts, minimum, are coming now into the ether?
Yeah. And how many of them are Einsteins or entrepreneurs that can really change the world?
They just need opportunity.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Exactly.
And everyone's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur is a mindset. Entrepreneur is not sitting back and owning your own island and having 48 businesses and having failed some and having successful some. Sure, that's an entrepreneur as well. But
Richard Branson style.
And he is an entrepreneur, absolutely. But an entrepreneur is a mindset. Like I've done extensive reading and definitions from various places of what an entrepreneur is, or what key figures and key authorities would consider an entrepreneur. And it's more than just. It's definitely acting. You have to. When I say acting, you have to physically live it. And and there is an element of being success, and that's defined by something. But it's not just defined by money, and it's not just defined. It's defined by failure. Actually,
sure.
It's defined, if you have to be really specific, it's defined by getting in there and doing it, and it's also defined by intention and attention to what you're doing. And these parallels are drawn in every area of life. You're sitting and meditating. What's your intention in your meditation?
Yeah.
What are you attentive to?
Sure.
We're having a conversation. What's my intention in this conversation? What am I attentive to? Am I attentive to you, or is my mind elsewhere? And so these parallels are drawn with regards to what is a successful outcome. If I'm attentive to you and I have a pure intention about why I'm here, I think the outcome and what we wanted to, and the outcome of this was, hey, let's have a conversation and let's just talk and put on a podcast and let's get some quality information out there. Not that we know everything or something that other people don't, but let's raise a whole bunch of questions that get people thinking, get us thinking, enlighten us, spend some time together. So this is part of outcome. So if I'm attentive and I have intention and vice versa to this process, it's only going to be better, right? So if we go back a few steps and say, well, if we have attention and intention to how we live our life, what bearing, what result does that have?
Yeah, it's massive one.
It has to be, right? It has to be. Like if you are writing a paper for a university assignment, I'm actually writing a book on this, right? It's not a plug. It's not out yet anyway.
Plug away, Stef.
But I'm writing a book on this, and part of it is attention and intention, the importance of that, and how it affects our lives. But if you're writing an essay and your intention is very clear, and you pay a lot of attention to that, what do you think the chances? And it's just all it is about increasing the outcome.
Sure.
Right? Or minimising the impact or maximising the impact in this case. Right? What do you think the chances of that being really successful, so getting a distinction or an A or whatever you want to call it, or a B or a high distinction, what do you think the chance of that are going to be if you place a greater deal of intention and attention to it? It's really simple. I just think it's simple. I don't think it's complex.
It's fundamental, really, isn't it? Yeah.
So if we go back to what we first spoke about in the first few minutes of this podcast, right? And now we incorporate intention and attention. So if we had intention to everything we did, we added intention to everything we did, and we had we placed attention to everything we did. Okay, but we had a clarity around what we did and why we did it. So there's obviously questions around that need to be answered and understood.
Sure.
And we step back and we observe the life we live, and we observe the life others are living, and we remove ourselves just for a moment, not permanently, because that becomes too extreme, right? And extreme is fundamental, and anything or fundamentalism, and anything that has fundamentalism attached to it isn't necessarily healthy because it's out of balance, right? We remove ourselves just for a moment, we look at the collective and we say, how do we fit here? And how does the collective help me? Or how does the collective enhance me or evolve me? Don't you think life will be very different? Because the quality of questions we're asking is determining the quality of life we're living.
Sure. And
I think that as a humanity, as a collective, as individuals we are, I think there's many people, and I would like to put myself in that category. I'm not perfect. I'm still working and learning and evolving and growing, and it's not about reaching perfection either, by the way.
No,
I don't think so. Anyway,
it's about not achieving it, but just striving for it. Exactly.
Striving for evolution, just evolving ourselves psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And if we did that, if we asked those quality questions, and I don't think enough people are asking them.
No.
But I think there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of great work.
Yeah.
And helping people ask those questions as well.
Definitely.
They have a lot of access to resources. When I say resources, they have a network, resources and human resources. They have people they can leverage upon. They can get their message out there. Whether they're monetizing that in the current system or not, I don't want to pay attention to that.
Yeah, don't want to judge that either, really.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, because it's let's not get, probably that's going to open up a whole other conversation, but let's not get into money, right? But it's relevant whether they're monetizing or not. But the message, okay, and what they're trying to say, and Dr. John Demartini is one of them. Got some really cool ideas, and they're groundbreaking.
I've never heard of him. What's his story?
Oh, he's got a. I mean, I suppose. Okay, so his history is. So Dr. John Demartini is a really interesting guy.
Okay.
He's in the areas of personal development, but more like human potential.
Okay,
so
sure.
the human potential movement.
Yep.
He's been doing it. He's probably 60, I think. 60 or 61, I think. Actually, no, I just think he had his 60th birthday. Yeah. Anyway, he's been doing it for like 40 years plus. So since he was 18. Had a sort of traumatic experience when he was 18. Nearly died. Met Paul Bragg, you know the vinegar, the apple cider vinegar, Bragg vinegar. You would have seen that organic apple cider vinegar, Bragg. So Paul Bragg started that. So he's a health enthusiast and a holistic practitioner of health and so forth.
Right.
And he lived to his 90s, I think. And now his daughter has that brand and she advocates it. And she's like in her 90s and she travels like 200 something days a year, man, just giving lectures on health and
nice.
She's a weapon. Yeah,
good on her. Yeah.
Yeah. So John DeMartini was originally inspired by that, and then he just went on to learn about life. So he's an expert in multiple fields. So you know what he did? There's just something really interesting, which I think is really cool. He identified what he needed. So he thought, what are the key disciplines and areas in life? And I think he identified 273.
Damn.
Okay. So all the way from Western philosophy to epigenetics to human movement to psychology and its subclasses of discipline and so forth, whatever that may be, right? And he identified 273, and then he said, what do I need to do to obtain a PhD in every discipline? How many books do I need to read, and what do I need to be exposed to? So he identified on average PhD in each of those 273 disciplines would require, I think he said, don't quote me, but anywhere between 80 to 120 books.
Okay.
Something like that.
Right.
70 to 120 or 110 books, depending on the discipline.
To cover
each discipline.
Right.
There's 273 disciplines.
Sure.
So you probably know where I'm going with this.
I do.
So he went and obtained, not unofficially, a PhD in each of those fields. So he's read nearly in excess of 30,000 books.
Damn.
Yeah. He's a cool guy, man. Very interesting to listen to. He's come to Perth regularly.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you never heard of him.
He sounds a bit like, to go back a little bit further in time, Terence McKenna. He was very much the same. Terence McKenna was just, he had a very good understanding of biology, sociology, shamanism, anything you could, art, fine art. He just had this amazing,
cool.
Really? Yeah. But he was really well read. But that's what I'm thinking, with technology increasing and if we can make it so it's available to all, then we could have that information within us already. Even from the day we're born, we could have doctorates in many different subjects. I don't think
that's far away, man.
I don't think it is either. Really, a game like this, we were just talking about, we've got any bit of information we really want to sort of have on this already. We say Google, but it's not Google, it's a search engine. Yeah.
But we say Google because it's so popular.
What happened to Ask Jeeves? Remember Ask Jeeves?
I love that guy. I used to use Ask Jeeves.
Yeah, I used to use
it.
Maybe we should just start using him again, just to stick it up Google.
Yeah, add two.
Yeah.
But, you can search engine anything.
Yeah.
You can Google anything these
Sure.
days. And, the answer's not too far away from being there.
Yeah.
But DeMartini's a cool guy. I backed him for a minute. He's got some he's very left field.
Okay. All right.
So I don't want to explain too much without then people thinking, whoa, hold on, this guy. People just got to go Google him.
Okay.
Search engine. He's got lots of videos out there.
Yeah.
He's got a very, very unique approach to life, and he definitely believes in polarity of existence.
Okay, cool.
So wherever there's a negative, perceived negative, there's an equal positive.
Right.
There's a positive there. If there's 1,000 negatives, there's 1,000 positives.
Sure.
They're there and they exist. And it's about understanding that's what life's about.
Right.
It's not about trying to be positive.
Yeah.
Or trying not to be negative.
It's more the awareness of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you're going to experience both. That's life. That's fundamental to existence.
Okay.
It's what we do with it and how we understand it, how we interpret it, and how we process it, which determines the way we live our life and the way we move in the world. Yeah.
Definitely. It's quite a simple thing when we say it out loud, but often it's also
Doing
hard
it's
to
very
practice.
different because of our conditioning.
Exactly right. A lot of it stems
Right.
from like our childhood environment and parents we might have had and friends we've been around, and how we view the world and how we view ourselves is really often dictated by that. So again, it's just that whole thing of going within. There's other things you can do to help allow that, but it really is definitely. The whole duality of this universe really does condense down into our life. Like you said, 1,000 things good, 1,000 things bad. It's just the association and the charge you put on each one of those. You've got the ability to dictate how you feel about each and everything that happens in your life. Like either one of your parents dies and you can say it's the most tragic, awful, horrible thing to ever happen to you, or you say, okay, well that's my mum or my father, and they're moving on to a better world, and well, not better world, but it's wherever they're changing, transitioning.
To understand it from a very different perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to celebrate their life rather than mourn in a case of self-pity.
I've done a couple of courses with him, right, and I've seen him. I've seen him transform people on stage, if you like, or whatever you call it, in the room. Okay, and he I will say this, and hope people go do their own research and understand it from a very different vantage point. And I've seen him equilibrate emotional dysfunction or emotional imbalance.
Okay.
And there's a particular process that he utilises, and we can all apply. It's very simple, and if you do it with diligence, intention and attention, part of that process, it can work for everybody. And you've got to do the work, though. Like he says, you've got to do the work. You've got to engage in it. And people, we get lazy.
Yeah,
and part of that is the cultural lifestyles that we've developed for ourselves, the conditioning that we've had. But he's transformed. So a lady was there and she said, my son died and it was tragic and there's nothing good that's come out of it. And by the end of it was 3 hours. It took him 2-3 hours. She was laughing and smiling and happy that her son passed away.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know that might sound really freaky to most people. How can you be happy that your son passed away? And she had an affinity with him. She loved him. It was like 14 years later and she was still grieving so deeply, And I mean, I don't have a child at this stage in my life, and B, if I did, the child probably wouldn't be 18 years old, nor would I have missed that child for 14 years because I'm not at that age. So she was in her 50s or 60s, but she had all that compounding experience. But he went through a process with, and I won't go into detail here because it's probably not the forum for it, but. And it's not some cultish secret thing or anything. It's just
sure.
lengthy, and I wouldn't do it justice anyway. But
he wasn't wearing a robe, was he, or anything like
that? Nor was everybody naked. But he went through this process that we all went through at some degree, and we all understood it, and we did the work there. Everyone in the room. It was very challenging for some people as well. Very challenging for me, to be honest with you, mate.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Very challenging because it forces you to look at yourself, and it forces you to really think. It forces you to be very attentive to your circumstances and your thought process and who you are, and really work through them diligently and be very relentless.
So
fucking relentless.
It's like dissolving attachments, really. Like
yes,
the prime example
absolutely.
was her attachment to her dead son, but also if you look at it from an individual point of view, your attachment to your thoughts and your ideals and all those sort of things. So being able to disillusion that by being aware of what they actually are.
Yeah. So I suppose the reason why we're talking about Demartini is because we're talking about people putting a message out there in the world, and I believe that one of the messages that he's putting out there in the world has tremendous value because it totally shifts the perspective of humanity, or it can do.
Yeah, right.
And one of his mandates is to keep doing this work. Man, he travels like 320 days a year. That's a lot, man. Like more, maybe a bit more, a bit less, around there. 300 plus.
Steph, fuck that. I don't know. I love traveling, but
so do I, man. But that's it's intense. And he does his courses like nearly every weekend, man.
Right.
That's intense. Like these courses are like 2.5 days intense. Like
he's a driven man.
He is, because he's driven by his message.
Yeah.
And he wants to make a lot of change change is the right word, transformation. He wants to affect people.
Sure.
And assist people in transforming their perspectives and their states of being. And and there's many people out there. And I think you're doing that as well in your own way through the podcast. You're living life, and you're observing life, and you're interpreting life, and then you're expressing it in a forum that allows other people beyond your immediate physical reach. You can touch other people in a particular way. You can, you're conversing with however many people view your podcast, whether it be 100, whether it be 1,000 or 1 million. It's irrelevant, but you're viewing other people, you're affecting other people that you couldn't affect in a physical manner, so to speak.
Sure,
right?
Yeah, through the ones and zeros. But I'm doing that, and you're doing that through being able to develop a relationship and association with people we don't necessarily know, through just being ourselves. And I think that's what's been the massive transition with this development in technology over the last 10, 15, 20 years, where we've been able to get away from cultural programming dictated by media, especially, and government.
Mainstream media,
Exactly, who are all, I don't like the word much, but fakes. They're people acting in a different persona, giving us information of how we should act and how we should behave. But that's changed, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. There's more and more people coming out now who are just being themselves, sharing information, sharing experiences, which is a massive, massive thing to do. And there's no bullshit behind it. I'm not trying to be anyone else. You're not trying to be anyone else. We're just being us. And if it resonates with someone else, then great. And I think what's happening is it's the message that I might have, or you might have, or is it DeMartini? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah, DeMartini.
Is more easily associated to the general public out there, because it's just the truth. It's just their truth as best they know it.
Cool. I want to ask you something about that.
Go for it.
You know who Mark Passio is?
No.
Have you heard of Mark Passio?
No.
Okay. He's fucking annoying, right?
Okay.
To an extent. But listen to the content. Kai got me on him.
Okay.
I've listened to probably about in excess of 20 hours of audio.
Right.
Which I think is a substantial amount to be able to identify where he's going.
Okay.
But heaps of podcasts.
Right.
Heaps of podcasts. Like he's got like 70-something podcasts, all about 2 hours each.
Okay.
Lots of lectures on. Anyway.
Mark Passio. Keep talking. I'm just going to put it on my phone.
Yeah. So this is what so we won't talk about it now, but he speaks a lot about universal truth.
Okay. Yeah.
He speaks a lot about morality. And basically, my understanding is a lot of what he says is so he advocates objectivism. Mm-hmm. So he's not really an advocate of cultural relativism or any form of relativism, so to speak. Right, okay. Very objective in universal principles and laws.
Sure. He sees it as a healthier point of view.
Yeah. And this, he says, it's not my perspective. He's saying it's not, and again, not going into details because it's a very, very long discussion. But it's not his perspective. These are grounded universal principles, and he goes into all of them and how and so forth. Okay. But what I wanted to ask you is, what's your perspective on, and he talks a lot about the New Age movement as well. So to give you an example of the New Age movement, an individual that would represent the New Age movement would probably be Deepak Chopra, Dr. Wayne Dyer. They would embody
Oprah.
Yeah, they would embody the ethos of the New Age movement. Again, that's a very complex ideology, so to speak, or philosophy as well. But he's not an advocate of the New Age movement at all. He despises it. Sure. And he says it's very harmful to humanity's existence because it really prioritises the individual, and it deprioritises truth because he's very objective in his understanding of reality. Right. Okay. So what I want to ask him, getting to it now, is what's your view on objectivism and subjectivism in terms of determining one's philosophy or ideology or the way they live their life? Yeah. Because if think about it, if it's objective, that means everyone has to live the same. There are certain guiding fundamental principles and laws that we all live by. That are objective. They're locked in. They don't change. What do you think about that? Or is that for another time?
That's maybe for another time. That is a big question, but
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Talk about it another time. Yeah. But I've been thinking a lot about that lately because I've been listening to stuff lately, and I think that's really, really interesting as coming from what foundation do we come from, you know?
Yeah.
Of understanding. That really contributes to it.
Can we make sure the next podcast we do is about that?
Yeah,
because I'd really like to have some time to have a think, because that's a pretty big question. And also listen to some of his stuff as well.
Yeah. There's other advocates of that as well, but
sure.
I'm continuing to listen and read some of his material too.
Yeah.
We should get Kai on here, man.
I'd love to get Kai on here. Yeah, definitely.
And not to steal Kai's thunder, but I'd love to sit here with Kai and you as well and discuss.
Yeah, get the three of us, be fantastic.
Have you ever done
Kai?
Kai Russell, where are you? Have you ever done, I can't remember if you've done more than one person, like you've seen more
no, I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Posted one the other day, it was 4 of us.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right. If we can just go back to that New Age movement too,
Yeah.
I'm also not a fan of the. Again, I definitely think it's changing. I mean, you can also call someone like Joe Rogan as being a part of the New Age movement now, but he's coming at it from a different perspective as a Deepak Chopra and as Wayne Dyer and all that sort of stuff. But I think that's the former, I believe, that understanding, that thinking of way to live, and the idea of being too much about the individual. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that point, because all healing and all transformation needs to occur first through the individual. I'm not too sure if that's exactly what he meant by it, but I understand, like, we all need to work as a collective.
Yeah, we'd have to go into... sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, okay, I guess it's something I need to have a bit more look into and see what his point of view on that is. Yeah. But, I think the idea of the New Age movement really needs to change, and it is evolving. It really is, to be more inclusive. It seems like it was, for a long period of time, it's been more exclusive, so... whatever the fuck that is anyway, really, the New Age movement.
He's got a 7.5 hour podcast that he goes through in great detail. And again,
there you go, everyone.
Yeah, Mark Passio, I think what's it called, spiritual New Age bullshit or something like that.
Okay.
So if you Google Mark Passio New Age, it will come up.
Right. Okay. I'll put some links on for both him and DeMartini as well. Yeah, I'll put it on the YouTube and on the Facebook page. It's
worth a look, but you've got to go beyond surface value with these guys, like especially Passio. Like, you've got to. And when I say he's fucking annoying, he's an interesting character, and he says it very openly as well. He says, "I don't care. I don't give a fuck if I offend you, or the way I speak doesn't align with you. I'm here to speak the truth, and this is the way I do it. I don't want to speak to people that can't handle what I'm saying, or don't understand it, or don't want to. I'm here to speak to people that can then go teach this truth, because that's my journey."
Yeah,
and, he's very clear on that, and he justifies.
I love that, man. Yeah, I fucking love that.
He's open and honest. But when I say he's annoying, like, he'll be given a podcast or he's in a lecture in an audience, and he starts raving on as if someone's said something to attack him, but no one said anything. It's like he goes on a tangent. It's like, Mark, calm the fuck down.
Gets his back up.
Yeah, he gets his back up, like, really, and it's just like, Mark, just relax.
Sure.
Just get on with what you're saying, because it's good. But anyway. But he's very clear, and he has a very intricate knowledge, and I think Kai's listened to a lot more than I have, obviously, because he got me onto it.
Right.
There's a very intricate knowledge in language, linguistics, and the root words and their meanings and where they've come from and how they've developed, which again is very, very, I think, very important in everyday language. When you can understand the words we're using and what their meaning is and how they were developed and why. And so he has a very, very intricate knowledge about that. He comes from a satanic background, so he was in the satanic cult,
right?
And then he got out and did a lot of work on himself and understood the dynamics of that and how that affected the world and so forth. And
fuck, this guy sounds more and more interesting.
He is interesting, and he basically says that the New Age movement is all propagated through the satanic cult as well.
Maybe it is. Quite possibly.
He's very knowledgeable either way.
Do you know much about Gnosticism and the basis behind Gnosticism?
Yeah, well, a little bit. I don't know define much, but I know I'm familiar with it.
So basically, the God that the monotheistic religions, for anyone else out there too, follow is really a demigod. It's a satanic God who asks its followers to kill and maim in the name of the God. Yeah, and so it fucking stands to reason that other...
That's what Zeitgeist won. the first
Yeah,
zeitgeist. I mean, that
exactly. Graham Hancock's a huge proponent of as well of Gnosticism, but it makes you think that if it makes sense. So then it's also made me think, what other aspects of humanity and what we take as culturally defined ways of life actually come from some fucking heinous source and not really our true loving being.
So a source that was defined in the time by powerful individuals or groups to serve self-interest.
Sure. But Gnosticism, though, takes it one step further into the spiritual as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
But why does it do that?
You know, because it's a duality of there's good, the bad.
I think the proponents of that, or the people instigating that, the groups instigating that earlier on in the piece, would have done so for leverage.
Sure, power leverage, you mean?
Power leverage, that's right, absolutely. Power leverage for the masses.
Right.
So, I mean, again, that's a very simple understanding of it, simplified understanding of it, but I think that would have contributed greatly to it.
Yeah.
But all this forms and creates where we are today.
Yeah. Which is in a pretty good fucking spot, really.
We're in a great spot.
Yeah.
Because we have an opportunity to... We're so expansive now in our awareness that we have an opportunity to say, hey, these systems that we've created for ourselves, here's the great benefit of it, but now it's time to do something a little bit differently.
Yeah.
We have that opportunity now. And we can say we're going to do it differently because of X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
And a lot more than just that.
Sure.
But we have that opportunity to do that now. So, we can sit back and say, you know what? We fucked up. We're not doing this right. But here are the benefits of it. And we can transform this. But what's the likelihood of that happening?
I think very good. But I'm an eternal optimistic, Stef. What do you think?
I don't know, mate. I'll be honest with you.
That's good too, yeah.
I don't know. I am hopeful. I am very hopeful.
Yeah,
and
very hopeful.
And I'm exposed, when someone gives me a horror story about ISIS, because I'll just mention that because that's in the media, lately, or there's a billion people, 100 million kids dying there, there's a lot that you can say as well that is transforming in the world, just as that's happening. So there's a lot of change that's occurring. If you look at statistics as well, given they're not warped or they're not falsified, so to speak, there are more people, and ratio being taken into account. There are more people today that have access to resources than ever before.
Right.
And I know we're at a greater population than we were 30 years ago. So that's.
But as a ratio, you mean?
As a ratio percentage,
right.
Yeah. So yes, there are all these people that are in poverty, but as a whole, we are improving our way of life and our lifestyles and the conditions of our lifestyles. And those that were below the poverty line are now above the poverty line according to standards because of the way it's being gauged. So
sure.
I know some of those are arbitrary as well. I'm aware of that, but there are statistics that say that, hey, we are doing better as a collective. So you take all that into account and say, okay, well, how can we make it even better? How can we change that? Yeah. So we are in a good spot because we're in a spot of tremendous. We have a tremendous ability to reflect now on who we are as a people and as individuals. And I think a lot of people are doing that. I think many people are doing that. I don't know what number. I'm not sure, but there's a movement. There's got to be a movement.
Definitely. Well, like I've definitely listened to other things in that though, like friends talking or groups talking. I guess they have the internet, so people I don't know, but they're saying the same thing. You're like, is something happening at the moment, or is it just us? And that's from like different parts of the world. And if something we are saying in Perth very often, like this tribe that's forming here, are like, is this going on elsewhere in the world? And it is. It's definitely, we're creating creating a new palette, a new color palette. So, okay, I really like the analogy you use. We can look at the different parts of the past and like look at the benefits and the bonuses of that. Let's just then use that and move it forward into another. Again, paradigm is an overdone word, but really, another paradigm, So,
I like the word paradigm.
I fucking love the word paradigm. I really do.
I really do like it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Overused though, you're right.
Yeah, but,
we haven't used so much this talk, have we?
What, paradigm?
Yeah.
We haven't used the word paradigm much.
We haven't used the word paradigm, but we haven't until like 30 seconds ago.
No, that's true.
We used it like 12 times.
Maybe I'll call it the paradigm. Maybe surely there's a podcast out there called the Paradigm Podcast. There has to be, wouldn't there?
There would be. Paradigm shift or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Cliche term.
Yeah. Well, Stef, we might wrap up there. What do you think?
Wrap up, mate. Yeah,
I think we left it on an optimistic note.
Yeah.
And
which gives food for thought.
Definitely.
Because sometimes if you leave it on a negative note, people say, oh, fuck it. It's Friday, I'm done.
Exactly. I'm not going to watch episode 35 of the Statera podcast now either. I want good news. But for everyone out there is some awesome news out there. So, well, thanks very much for coming on again. I think definitely we'll love to have Kai on. Next, we definitely won't make it another 6 months. Yeah. Let's both message him. Because he can be a bit flaky sometimes.
A bit.
Yeah.
I hope he watches this. Very fucking flaky.
It's actually funny. While must have been about 2 minutes before you came here, I was just sitting on the bench there, and this video popped up of this dude on a mountain bike riding along, and a deer jumped out. I'll show you in a moment. I was like, fuck, I'll show Kai. So I commented, Kai Russell on it, so he saw it. So, yeah, it's funny that we bring him up again. Definitely a lot to go over there. Thanks very much, Stef. I'm going to look into those couple of individuals. And thanks, mate. And I'll attach links to the Facebook link to this and also the YouTube link for anyone who wants to check out those two gentlemen. Also, we spoke about Terence McKenna. Well, I can't understate how much I've learned from Terence McKenna. And it's not that I take everything he says as gospel, which you should never do from anyone. But
it's a beautiful perspective, mate.
Just a beautiful perspective, yeah, and a no bullshit perspective as well, which I really like about him. And he really was a trendsetter. Him, Alan Watts, Timothy Leary, those kind of guys really paved the way for a lot of the people that are out there now.
A lot of respect for Alan Watts.
Yeah, speaking their truth, just being them, being individuals.
Such a cohesive, and for me, just it really resonates.
Yeah, definitely.
It really resonates.
Yeah. So have a look at some of those people as well. Okay, all right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks very much, Stef, and thank you very much.
Guys.
Yeah, it's always much appreciated. And until next time, take care of yourself, and we'll see you later. Bye. Thanks, Stef.
Good, mate. It's good, brother.
Thank you.